Millionaire's plan for a fake fiancé takes a turn he never saw coming. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. Ryan Whitmore didn't earn the title of youngest CEO in Whitmore and Chase history by playing it safe. He was calculated, focused, and famously unattached, both to people and emotions. From his corner office, glass walls framed a pristine skyline, the kind of view reserved only for those who didn't believe in distractions like love. But distractions had arrived in the form of a legal bombshell. His phone buzzed. "We've got a problem," his legal advisor muttered. "The Valmont deal, it's not just numbers. They want a family man, someone they can trust beyond the boardroom. You need to be engaged, married if possible." Ryan scoffed. "So I have to play house now to close a deal?" There was silence then, yes. For the first time in years, Ryan didn't have an immediate solution. His board scrambled, old flames, acquaintances, even professional actors were considered. None seemed viable. Too risky. Too fake. Too obviously staged. Then his assistant, almost as a joke, tossed out a name, Emily Carter. She wasn't on any list. She wasn't corporate, wasn't polished. But she had one thing the others didn't, an unpredictability that made her oddly believable. Ryan's curiosity won out. He had her brought in. When Emily walked into his office, she looked as though she had just finished painting a mural. Jeans splattered, hair in a messy knot, hands stained with color. She didn't smile, didn't shrink in awe of the luxury surrounding her. She just looked at him and said, "So, you want to rent a human?" He raised an eyebrow. "I need someone convincing. Fiancé. For one weekend." Emily crossed her arms, studying him like he was a canvas she wasn't sure deserved her effort. "And what makes you think I'm the one for that job?" "You're not a typical choice," Ryan replied. "That's exactly why you'll work." She hesitated. The idea was ridiculous. Absurd even. But then he mentioned the amount. A figure so high, she blinked twice just to make sure she'd heard correctly. For a struggling artist buried in rent and unfinished projects, the offer was impossible to ignore. He laid out the plan. A private estate. A retreat packed with investors, their families, old money types who'd be watching closely. She had to be charming, elegant, but above all, believable. They'd rehearse a backstory, create a few shared memories. It would be precise, clean, and over within 72 hours. No emotions, he warned. No improvising. Emily tilted her head, considering. "And what happens if I accidentally become more likable than you?" Ryan smirked. "Then you'll be doing your job." Despite every instinct telling her to walk away, Emily signed the NDA, shook his hand, and sealed the deal. As she left the office, Ryan watched her go, something unfamiliar twisting in his chest. This wasn't just a business arrangement, it was a gamble. And for a man who never bet on people, that was dangerous ground. The roles were cast. The script was written. The performance of their lives was about to begin. The black car rolled up the long, winding drive of the Whitmore estate, tires crunching softly over white gravel. Framed by acres of manicured lawns and framed by ivy-covered stone, the countryside mansion looked more like royalty's summer home than a business retreat. It radiated wealth, old and unapologetic. Emily leaned forward, eyes wide. "Let me guess. This isn't Airbnb." Ryan didn't answer. His mind was already sprinting through mental checklists. Names of investors, potential pitfalls, cues she needed to remember. But next to him, Emily wasn't rehearsing lines. She was soaking it in, amused by the spectacle. As they stepped out, all eyes turned. The elite were gathered in clusters, champagne glasses in hand, laughter rehearsed, smiles sharp. Ryan, polished in a tailored suit, looked like he belonged. Emily didn't, and that was the first thing everyone noticed. She wore a simple, form-fitting dress, elegant but unbranded. Hair swept up carelessly, no diamond necklace, no pretension, just presence. "This is Emily," Ryan announced as they approached the group. "My fiancée." The word fell with impact. There were nods, a few surprised glances, and one fixed stare from Sophia Dane. Tall, graceful, dressed in frost blue silk, Sophia glided forward with a knowing smile. "Congratulations," she said, kissing Ryan's cheek with deliberate familiarity. Her eyes never left Emily. "You're full of surprises." Emily returned the smile without flinching. He surprises me too. Every day. They mingled and quickly it became clear Emily didn't know how to blend in. And she didn't care. When asked about her career, she described it in vivid, self-deprecating color, gallery rejections, unpaid commissions, and the joy of finishing a piece no one may ever buy. It was disarming. The wives laughed with her, the older guests leaned in. She made people feel like they were in on a private joke. Ryan, meanwhile, watched from the sidelines, uncertain whether to be impressed or horrified. By the time dinner began in the grand hall, its ceilings dripping with chandeliers and silverware polished to perfection, Emily had become the evening's unexpected star. Then came the moment that sealed it. One of the investors, a silver-haired gentleman with a Texas drawl, asked, "So, how'd you propose, son?" Ryan stiffened, unprepared. Emily didn't miss a beat. She launched into a warm, improvised tale about a winter night, a broken-down car, and a roadside diner where Ryan dropped a ring into a cup of cheap coffee. The story was absurd, romantic, and strangely believable. Her voice trembled at the right moments, her eyes sparkled like it had really happened. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Ryan stared at her, speechless. Not because of the lie, but because she made it feel like the truth. Later, as the crowd thinned and laughter echoed down the halls, Ryan caught himself smiling, genuinely. No deal, no contract, no calculated benefit. Just the warmth of a moment he didn't control. And that terrified him more than anything. The estate had grown quieter, its formalities tucked away with the empty wine glasses and folded linen napkins. Moonlight spilled across the garden path in pale streaks as Emily walked beside Ryan. Her heels abandoned, her laughter soft in the warm night air. "Let me get this straight," she said, smirking. "You're a billionaire pretending to be engaged to a broke artist, so you can impress old men with trust funds and suspenders." Ryan's lip twitched. "When you say it like that, it sounds ridiculous." "Because it is," she replied, twirling briefly under a hanging vine, her bare feet brushing the grass. "But also, weirdly fun." Ryan's usual armor, stoicism, sarcasm, detachment, began to crack. He found himself replying not with rehearsed lines or clipped answers, but with something closer to honesty. For once, there were no cameras, no scrutiny, no boardroom dynamics. Just the rustle of leaves and the faint hum of insects in the night. Emily slowed her steps. "Tell me something real." He hesitated. She looked over, curious. "Why haven't you ever been in love?" Question no one dared ask. He shoved his hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on the horizon. "Love's not exactly efficient. It slows you down." Emily tilted her head. "That's a deflection." He sighed, almost smiling. "I guess growing up it was just me and my father. He was always working. Legacy over love. I learned early not to expect much more." Her face softened, but she didn't pity him. "And now you're trying to build your own legacy." He nodded. "But maybe you don't know what you're missing," she said quietly. Their eyes met. There was no act in that look, no pretending. Just two people unexpectedly disarmed by each other. Back inside the estate, a different kind of conversation was unfolding. Sophia, ever poised, whispered to the retreat's host over flutes of champagne. "She's not who she says she is," she murmured. "I don't mean in a criminal way. Just, doesn't she feel out of place?" The host raised an eyebrow. "She seems lovely." "Too lovely," Sophia replied. "Ryan's never been like this. It doesn't add up." She smiled sweetly, but the undercurrent was sharp. Seeds of suspicion began to settle. Out in the garden, Ryan was unaware of the doubt gathering behind his back. He was watching Emily gaze up at the stars, her face bathed in silver light. "Most people don't see you," she said, not turning. "They see the suit, the bank account, the reputation." "And what do you see?" he asked quietly. She finally looked at him. "A man who doesn't know if he's playing pretend anymore." The words landed harder than he expected. Something unspoken lingered between them, fragile, unplanned, real. It wasn't the moment to act on it, but it was the first time Ryan didn't want to walk away from one. In the stillness, beneath flickering lanterns and moonlight, the act they had so carefully staged began to unravel, not with exposure, but with truth. And neither of them saw it coming. Morning sun filtered through lace curtains as the estate buzzed back to life. Emily, somehow both out of place and perfectly suited to the weekend's rhythm, had become the unexpected centerpiece. With a brush in one hand and a group of giggling children around her, she turned a quiet patio into a colorful playground of painted hands and laughter. The adults watched from the terrace. Wives with glasses of sparkling juice, board members with reluctant smiles softening their usual stiffness. Even Ryan's most skeptical colleagues had begun to nod approvingly. She wasn't just pulling off the role. She was rewriting it. Ryan observed from a distance. Something about her disarmed people and now disarmed him. She brought warmth into spaces that had always been cold, including the ones inside him. But beneath the polished surface, unease stirred. Sophia struck when Emily was alone, rinsing paint from her fingers in the garden sink. "You're good," she said, stepping out from the hedges like a scene stealer waiting for her cue. Emily didn't flinch. "And you are, Sophia, ex-fiancée, the one before he decided love was a liability." A pause. "Then, I know you're not real." Emily smiled, controlled. "Define real. You're not in his world. You're just temporary." The words landed, not as daggers, but as ice, slow, invasive. Emily stood tall, but her hands trembled once Sophia walked away. Unbeknownst to both, Ryan had caught the last line. That night, as the sun dipped low, tension cracked the thin veneer they had polished so carefully. Ryan found her on the veranda. "Care to explain what that was about?" Emily didn't look at him. "Ask your ex. She seems to know everything." He stepped closer, jaw tight. "You're not here to argue with people. You're here to support the image." She turned sharply. "The image? You mean the perfectly curated illusion? Maybe if your entire life wasn't manufactured, this wouldn't be so hard to fake." The words hit like a slap. "You think I'm fake?" he asked quietly. "I think you've forgotten how to be anything else." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was heavy, loaded with everything they hadn't said and everything they couldn't take back. Emily left without another word. Ryan stayed, rooted to the spot, wondering when he stopped controlling the narrative. Later, in separate corners of the estate, they unraveled alone. Ryan sat in the dim light of the whiskey lounge, a half-full glass untouched beside him. He replayed her laugh, her off-script warmth, the story she told at dinner. None of it felt strategic. All of it felt dangerous. Emily lay on the guest house bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of what she'd said pressing on her chest. It was supposed to be simple. A weekend gig. A paycheck. But now she wasn't sure what part of it had been pretend and what had crept in uninvited. The final dinner was approaching. The room would be filled with expectations, applause, contracts. But if the cracks deepened, everything might collapse before the deal was done. And neither of them knew if they were still pretending. The final dinner shimmered with polished elegance. Gilded candelabras lit the long dining hall in a warm, deceptive glow. Waiters in white gloves served delicate courses between bursts of laughter and raised glasses. The business deal Ryan had chased for months was on the cusp of closing. Smiles were wide, pens ready. At the head of the table, Ryan wore his usual composed mask, though beneath it, unease flickered. Emily sat beside him, radiant in a deep emerald gown that didn't need diamonds to turn heads. She laughed when prompted, held her glass just right, but her eyes wandered, searching, uncertain. Sophia waited for her moment. She rose with a toast in hand, her voice melodic, measured. "To honesty," she said, raising her flute. "To knowing who we're truly inviting into our lives." Then she turned. "I thought I'd share a little memory of our lovely guest," she added, pulling a small photo from her clutch and laying it on the table. It was Emily, paint-smeared, grinning, framed by unfinished canvases in a cramped studio. A world far from the one she now sat in. The room froze. Murmurs swelled like a tide. Forks paused midair. Eyebrows lifted. One of the board members leaned closer to inspect the photo. "She's not." Whispers spiraled through the room. Emily could feel the shifty. The doubt, the judgment, the tightening air. Faces that had once smiled now tilted with suspicion. Ryan reached for words but found none. He hadn't anticipated this. Hadn't protected against it. And in that silence, everything teetered. Then Emily stood. The hush deepened. She didn't flinch. Her voice cut through the murmurs, not defensive, not desperate, but sure. "I never claimed to be something I'm not," she began, holding the room with unexpected grace. "I didn't grow up with private jets or portfolios. Paint. I struggle. I survive. But every smile I gave you this weekend was mine. Every story I shared, every child I painted with, it was me. She turned slightly, facing the hosts. Yes, I came here pretending to be someone's fiancé. But somewhere along the line, the act blurred. And maybe that's the irony. Sometimes you find something real in the middle of what's supposed to be fake. No one moved. Emily nodded once, then stepped back. That's all. And she left. Quietly. With dignity. Ryan remained seated, stunned. The deal hadn't fallen apart. If anything, the investors seemed more intrigued than offended. A few even nodded in respect. It wasn't the deception they responded to, it was her honesty, her presence. But Ryan wasn't thinking about contracts anymore. He wasn't angry. He was afraid. Afraid that when she walked out, she wasn't just leaving the dinner. She was leaving him. And he had no idea how to follow. By morning, her room was empty. No note. No trace. Just silence. The merger would go on. The world would keep turning. But Ryan, the man who never missed a step, suddenly didn't know which direction to take. The city pulsed outside Ryan's tinted car window, but he barely saw it. Horns blared, lights flashed, pedestrians crossed without looking. None of it registered. His jaw clenched, one hand gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. He wasn't racing toward a boardroom or deal. This time, it wasn't strategy pushing him forward. It was something messier. Regret. Emily had slipped away while he was still deciding whether to chase her. He'd built a life on logic, but now logic felt useless. The first stop was her studio. A dusty bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside, only to find the place stripped bare. Easels gone. Paint-stained aprons missing. A faint outline where a canvas once leaned remained like a ghost of her presence. Her phone went straight to voicemail. The silence pressed in like consequence. Days dragged. Then a whisper from one of her old contacts led him to a small gallery tucked between a cafe and bookstore. He arrived to see her barefoot on a ladder, adjusting the lighting above a canvas of bold reds and fractured blues. She didn't see him at first. And when she did, she froze mid-reach, hands still clutching the cord. Ryan stepped closer, slowly, no bravado, no performance. I'm not here to fix anything, he said. Or sell you an idea. Her eyes narrowed slightly, cautious. Then why are you here? He took a breath. Because I'm done pretending. I've spent years building a version of life that looked perfect. And in all that effort, I miss what was actually real. She descended the ladder, arms crossed, not cold, but uncertain. You're not used to showing up without a pitch. He nodded. I don't want fake anymore. Not in business. Not in life. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It held weight. And what exactly do you want? She asked, voice low. His reply came without hesitation. You. No contracts. No weekend roles. Just you. She didn't smile right away. She studied him, not with skepticism, but with depth. Like she was trying to see if this version of him was permanent or another layer of polish. The gallery lights dimmed around them, motion-triggered sensors fading as they stood still. Only the glow from her paintings illuminated the space, colors wild and uncontained, the opposite of Ryan's world. He didn't move to close the distance. Didn't rush in for some cinematic gesture. He simply stood there, open. Vulnerable in a way he'd never allowed himself to be. Emily looked at him, really looked. Then a small, real smile curved her lips. Took you long enough? No kiss. No applause. Just two people surrounded by color and silence, their walls finally down. It wasn't the end of a performance. It was the beginning of something unscripted. And for once, Ryan Whitmore didn't want to rewrite a single word. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from and drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Ryan's transformation from a cold-hearted CEO to someone finally brave enough to love? Did Emily's strength and authenticity move you as much as it moved the crowd at the estate? What are your thoughts on Sophia's bold interference? We'd love to hear your take on their journey. Don't forget, more incredible stories like Ryan and Emily's are coming your way soon.